So I don't have to micromanage. I can delegate easily, and I can focus more on the 5-year plan, more on the strategy.
It could be challenging given that you're not making widgets.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some mainstream.
Would be missing with speed if you go somewhere else. Right? I made successfully, and that's how I grew basically back to DNA, right? There is no mechanism for it's.
Welcome to the Strategic Planning Room, the podcast where strategic planning meets purpose. Today, we explore the CDMO industry, CDMO being Contract Development Manufacturing Organization, valued at over $130 billion and projected to grow at double-digit rates. It has become a critical backbone of modern pharmaceuticals, enabling faster drug development, scalable manufacturing, and innovation that directly accelerates patient access to life-saving therapies. Our guest today is Dr. Sigma Mustafa, Chief Scientific Officer at KBI Biopharma. KBI is an organization that stands as a proven leader in the CDMO space, delivering end-to-end development and manufacturing solution that consistently accelerates clients' path to market. With its unmatched scientific expertise, rigorous quality systems, and a track record of advancing complex biologics, KBI continues to set the standard for reliability, innovation, and partnership in a rapidly growing global industry. Welcome to the Strategic Planning Room.
Thank you, Amy, Mustafa.
And thank you for hosting us today in the Venture Center facility here at KBI.
Absolutely.
You have been part of the KBI journey since its early years. Your experience on the science side greatly contributed to the company's growth. Under your scepter, the organization was recognized as a global leader in biologics manufacturing via the 2025 CDMO Leadership Awards presented by Outsourced Pharma and Life Science Connect. So today, I would like to demystify the CDMO industry for our audience here. And to do that, maybe we can start by understanding, with your help, how does CDMO results and products impact the day-to-day lives of people?
Thank you, Amy, first of all, for bringing me to this particular session and for this opportunity, and fantastic question. CDMOs are a true partner of our customers who are serving the patients. So the drugs we develop, right, we are not developing widgets, we are developing medicines. And these drugs are oftentimes for life-saving entities that will create life or death situation for someone, as well as first-in-class medicines, right? For previously, maybe there was no cure, etc., right? So what we are doing every day matters so much. That's why we are so focused on the speed of development and the accuracy of execution. Because what we develop, it has to be pure, it has to be right identity, right concentration, and at the end of the day, it has to meet the regulatory bodies' criteria for what constitutes a drug, and then it reaches the patients. So we reach the patients through our customers, and we are working hand in hand with them. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
I know that this is a highly regulated and industry with a lot of competition. So, to the extent of the possible, can you give us tangible examples of drug substances developed and produced at KBI that save patients' lives?
Absolutely. So we have worked on over 200 drug entities, right? And out of that, 56% are for various types of cancers. And we all know that the prognosis on cancer can often be pretty dire. Outside of cancer, we have all kinds of diseases in terms of immunological diseases as well as Alzheimer's. We have various types of viruses, and we have including Ebola and Zika, etc. Right? So we pretty much encompass all types of disease conditions, and in fact, I believe we also have drugs that are for cessation of smoking habits, things like that. So it's a truly wide range of drugs that we are supporting. And all of them are protein drugs, which are the more complex type of drugs that are in the market compared to small molecules. So the impact is huge, which is why our retention of our employees and their morale and their excitement in working here is very high because we all know what we do matters so much.
Yeah, thank you. Has there been any instance where a pharma company comes to KBI saying, we have looked everywhere to develop a certain molecule and it was very challenging to get that, and coming to KBI as a last resource? Have there been any cases like that?
Absolutely, absolutely. We often joke that we are usually not working on what we would call vanilla mAbs, or monoclonal antibodies, meaning those that are very easy to make. Customers come to us when they know they have a very complex protein or a very complex process that is hard to scale up and to deliver ultimately at a larger scale, right? That is when they choose KBI, because we are not the largest CDMO, but we are one of the most respected for our technical capabilities. So we have actually many examples where customers have either from the get-go couldn't get other CDMOs to work on certain problem because they said, we don't know how to solve this challenge, or they have tried multiple times and failed, and then they came to us, right? We have examples of other larger CDMOs having challenges. We have examples from all over the world, actually, where customers come and tell us at the end that we were giving up hope that can we ever develop this product. And the reason we are so successful is KBI started as an analytical services company. So truly our breadth and depth on analytical side is unmatched. We are a true powerhouse on analytical services. So from the very beginning, from cell line development all the way through manufacturing, we are doing all the additional testing to know, do we have the right drug and what processes, what changes do we need to make to get to the final solution.
Awesome. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey, please? Having started as a scientist and now you are the global scientific leader here at KBI.
Absolutely. So I started in industry right after my PhD from Northwestern University in chemical engineering. I joined Eli Lilly as a lab scientist and very quickly had a group of my own and was, growing incrementally, I would say. And what I found is after a couple of years, as I looked around and I saw that there are two paths, right? One is you stay in the lab path and the scientific ladder, and you can grow in that path. And the other path is at some point you move to your management ladder, right? And that has a broader influence and impact, essentially, but you are slightly moving away from the science, right? And there is a general impression of hardcore scientists that they are not the best in terms of people skills, right? So, or in terms of managing large groups, because they just love their bench and lab science so much, right? So I knew that I have to go against that perception and yet I wanted to maintain my technical capabilities. I didn't want to lose it completely, right? So, and I see that struggle, sort of balancing and straddling these two areas is challenging for a lot of people. So I grew through the sort of the scientific ladder for a while. And then I had to convince a lot of people that I can manage large groups where my technical core strength may not 100% match, but there are adjacent areas that I can overall manage and focus on the strategic side of the business and focus on the financials of the business and not only on the technical side, right? You have to convince your organization that you have focus on the revenue and the operating income, even though you come from a scientific ladder, for you to get those opportunities. So that's the transition I made successfully. And that's how I grew. Basically, at Lilly, I grew through a couple of promotions, and I was what's called a core team leader for a program that's now in the market called TALS. And basically, I was running all of the CMC components of it. I was also chosen as one of the up-and-coming women leader at Lilly. And then we moved as a family to North Carolina, and I was in Merck for a couple of years before 15 years back now, I joined KBI and built the organization grounds up.
Wonderful. Having a very strong technical background, and you touched on this, it's often challenging to transition from doing to strategizing and leading.
Right.
And we see this not only in the science world, but we see it in any field where there is a technical acumen that gets you to the position where you are. I'm going through that myself as well. So could you tell me how, in your opinion, one could overcome that challenge, moving from doing to leading and letting others do?
That is a challenge, right? And I see oftentimes the thought process that goes through our mind is, if I do it, it will be much faster, and I know it will be done right. So why would I ask someone else to do it, right? And then I have to watch it anyway. But the reality is that you cannot scale that kind of a process. Also, your goal as a manager is to build the next generation leaders and your successors, right? So you have to let people try, and maybe sometimes they will fail and they will learn through that process, just like the way we learned, right? As we came through the ladder. So I have over the years learned to trust my instinct as well as have more patience, right? So if things go a little bit south, be able to have enough of a fortitude and planning so that I can come back and sort of course correct as needed, and have the right leadership, be able to build right leadership underneath me, which I feel very proud of, the leaders I have been able to grow over the years, that I have a lot of confidence in them. So I don't have to micromanage. I can delegate easily, and I can focus more on the 5-year plan, more on the strategic side of the business, while the day-to-day operations is moving through smoothly. I'm always looking at the right metrics and KPIs to make sure that's happening, so that I'm not caught off guard, but I am not feeling like I have to know every single detail. Right. That it took multiple years for me to get there.
Wonderful. Yeah. And so in an industry like the CDMO industry, there are multiple segments that could represent a competitive advantage. But at the end of the day, it's the science in this specific industry. Could you tell us how that is? Because we have so many different CDMOs out there trying to compete on things like speed to market, things like pricing. Right. But at the end of the day, it's the quality of the science and the ability to take on that challenge that truly represents a competitive advantage. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, absolutely. So your competitive advantage, as you said, is not your factory. It is the science and technology, right? Because we are not building widgets, we are building medicines, and it's a highly technical field. So for you in this field to supersede others, you have to have the scientific rigor to solve problems faster or more accurately, and sometimes even to be cheaper, to use the right materials and know how you can get there with the same outcome that all of you are trying, but being able to get with cheaper material even requires knowing a lot about the material. And none of these are simple things. These are highly complex chemicals you are working with, biologics you are working with. And what we have focused on is we have to have the technology that our customer base has, right? All the large pharma and biotechs have. And we have to have something beyond that. What are the newest technologies in the market? What are the newest, especially analytical technology in the market? And be able to know how to use those technologies properly. So we have that cutting edge advantage that we have brought in all the right scientists with the right capabilities and expertise from the right labs, right? From right academic labs or right institutes, so that we have all those capabilities lined up whenever, however we might need them. And that's where our competitors are often not able to keep up with us. Yeah.
And that's a very good point, because if you take a look at this industry overall, the way it spans from cell line development to analytical formulation to process development to CGMP production and then product release, that's where strategic planning is extremely important and extremely complex. Because to borrow your word earlier, if you're making widgets, you know exactly the materials that need to go into that widget. So
exactly.
Your planning even for years ahead is straightforward. But when you are supposed to do a longer term strategic planning without knowing what product you will be working on, that pushes you to address planning on a more strategic way, to say, this is the type of trends we are seeing in the marketplace. So we need to get ahead on the CapEx side to be equipped. And we need to hire X amount of scientists to be able to handle the demand that we foresee coming. And we need to hire also X amount of proposal writers to review and work on those proposals. So very complex industry. And I would love to understand your appreciation on the planning side of this industry, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Planning in this industry is difficult, but absolutely 100% necessary for you to have a profitable business, right? And it is a costly industry as well, because the trends are changing so much. In the labs itself, what we have to do is be aware that the mix of products that we are working on, there was a time when mostly these were monoclonal antibodies. Then it became bispecific, trispecific antibodies, meaning that these antibodies were not just binding to a single antigen, but to 2-3 different entities, right? And over time, it became multi-specifics. Now we talk about not only protein molecules, but small molecules and chemical drugs, right? Antibody drug conjugates. That is the product. What that means now is not only you have your antibody, you have a linker and you have a payload, which is a chemotherapeutic drug or some other kind of a peptide or some other small entity that you also have to source now, right? So it's a question of understanding how the clinical pipeline is changing, how many of the products that are now going to go into clinic, and eventually for the next 10 years, these are going to dominate the market. Therefore, they will be a large portion of your portfolio. Therefore, you need to be aware which ones of these linkers and payloads you might be working with, right? As well as more information comes for the standard vanilla antibodies as well, your raw materials and your process are changing. We are moving from, let's say, fed batch process to continuous process, right? All of that changes your consumables, it changes your raw materials, etc. So planning has to be part of your overall process and mapping of the process from the very beginning. You cannot have a situation where the process development analytical groups are doing their own thing, and then supply chain comes in more closer towards when manufacturing discussions are happening, and everyone is caught off guard as to a changing trend because we have certain material we always keep on shelf, but now they're not needed. We need something else. It simply doesn't work, right? So that planning phase and being involved not just for today's, what we are doing today, but the technical folks being able to articulate what they need 6 months from now or from a year from now, what do we think we will be working on? We owe it to the rest of the organization to be able to articulate that.
Thank you. Let's discuss a little bit science as a strategy. At the end of the day, in this industry specifically, the process is the product. And how does R&D, for the lack of a better term,
right?
How does R&D define market positioning and the growth for CDMOs overall?
So in a couple of ways, right? Even though CDMOs are primarily a service organization, there are few things CDMOs create that are products, not just process. And one of which is our cell lines. So there would be only one CDMO that can generate a particular type of a cell line, right? A microbial cell line or an alien cell line. Because of the technology, the IP that we own, no one else can use it unless they're out licensing that technology, right? So that's one area definitely where, we are influencing the R&D component and that has an overall impact. There are other areas, other technologies where in some cases it is a patented technology that certain CDMOs have owned and that gave them advantage. But what balances that is if you go somewhere else, can you still use that technology, right? So a customer will take that into account. If you're scaling up, you're going to a different country, can you take this very proprietary technology and be able to successfully, robustly use it? So it's a complex balance of the sophistication of the technology. Sometimes we have seen in harvest technology or purification technology something very unique come into play, but it also marries you up with that particular CDMO, which creates some challenges.
So have there been any instances where you opted not to pursue certain demand because you could see that in the future that was not going to be sustainable anymore or something of that nature to drive that strategy and the long-term plan for the organization? Have you ever received the demand and you said, we might not be able to do that. We are very selective on what
that is correct. That can happen from two ends. One is, let's say, a very unique product mix, a product type that comes in that requires us to establish a new unit operation or, in fact, modify our facility. We have had that kind of need. Also, we have had opportunities of collaborating with a product developer who wants to bring in a new technology that we can opt in and be a partner in, right? And only KBI can offer it. In some cases, we have been interested in those technologies. In other cases, what we looked at is the planning, right? Right now, this looks very good because we are seeing 12 to 15 batches can be produced with this technology. However, that's for this year. What will happen next year? What will happen 10 years from now? And do we see this particular segment of the market really growing or not? So you are taking risks, basically. You are guessing what may happen in a decade, and you are worried that you may miss out by not choosing this very unique technology. But we have been in situations where we chose to not partner, not move forward with an opportunity because we saw that it will dilute out everything else we do and it will create enough burden in our planning and in our system that longer term, it didn't make sense.
That makes sense. And of course, the reputation in the marketplace about KBI is that it's a powerhouse of science and process development and analytical formulation. Can you tell us a little bit what earned KBI the awards it did? And the most recent one is the one that I mentioned earlier, which is being the global leader in biologics manufacturing for 2025.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are very proud of this award. And in fact, this is a couple of years in a row we have received this award. And this award is actually through surveys of clients who have used KBI. And there are more than 200 CDMOs who get ranked. And being able to be chosen as a leader in that milieu, it means a lot. The reason we have been able to achieve this is our sweet spot is we are a fully disposable technology company, right? So our sweet spot is we are in this 2,000 liter scale where a lot of entry of new products are happening, mainly in clinic, right? So we see a lot of phase 1 through phase 3 clinical runs, and we also see commercial manufacturing as a launch site. And depending on the demand of the product, we also are supporting long-term commercial manufacturing. So we just see a lot of diversity of product compared to a lot of other CDMOs who are more focused on the commercial manufacturing side of things, right? We are supporting from process development upward of 50 molecules per year. So as we have this diversity, we see very complex molecules. Oftentimes what happens is a molecule in animal may show great potential, right? But the scalability, the stability of the molecule, all of that has to be achieved through proper development, not just process development, but formulation development, etc. So unless you can bring those along the way, the molecule will die. It's not even going to go to clinic. So we have been able to support a lot of customers to go to clinic. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have been able to go to clinic. So because of those case studies, one of which we have published on was for HIV vaccines. It was a work with Duke University. It was funded by the government. And we worked on 6 separate vaccine molecules, which were proteins with 50% of the molecular weight of the protein was glycosylation. So extremely complex glycosylation profiles, and matching that profile exquisitely well to get the right level of vaccine properties that you need was difficult. We had to come up with new way of using equipment that even the vendor of the equipment has not expected. This was in context of Biacores and other equipment. That created our reputation, essentially, that almost academic research that seems impossible to scale up is something KBI can take, and KBI can put all the tools that can be available and take it to the clinic. So there is a fair opportunity to try this out and see if we can truly have the impact, human impact that we are hoping for.
Well, hoping for many, many more similar awards. So talking about the way you're able to service clients that maybe can be difficult otherwise, there is this KPI of customer lifetime value, which pretty much stands for the total revenue or profit that a given company, a given customer, can provide a given company. I heard it in more casual settings called as the stickiness rate.
Right.
And with the understanding that KBI has a high stickiness rate.
Right.
Can you tell us more about why that is?
So, yes, what we see is once a customer comes to KBI, that they stay with KBI. We call that the stickiness factor. And what we have seen is some of these customers with very, very high depth of a pipeline where every year they have 2 to 3 molecules coming through for over a decade. So that generated maybe 15 to 20 some molecules from a customer, single customer, and as their pipeline gets some tweaks, we see those as well. But what we are able to do is take their first molecule, do a full development, and then create a platform for them so that their next molecule and subsequent ones can move through process development and manufacturing faster, right? So even if it's not a standard monoclonal antibody, we are able to create a platform customized for them, right? Which is why customers stay with us, because they are getting the best value. They are getting the speed, but they are getting the know-how and all the underpinning of knowledge and capabilities that would be missing with speed if you go somewhere else, right? So what we are bringing is the technical capability and the knowledge. On top of that, the high touch, the real, very intentional engagement with customers. The fact that our customers can easily access our technical leaders and can have conversations with them instead of just seeing more dealing with business people, let's say, is a big advantage that the customers appreciate, which is why the stickiness, which is close to 50%, is what we see.
That's a great trait. So let's talk a little bit about value-based pricing. We are seeing a heavier pivot to focusing more on value-based pricing. How can pricing be baked into process development, given that this is oftentimes pricey? How can that be accounted for early on?
I think, again, we need to be very good in articulating this, right? So definitely from the very early stage of process development, you have choices, right? You have choices of raw materials, which can be more or less costly. You have choices of unit operations. You can have many or you can have few, and that can have implications on the purity of the product, etc., right? What we try to do is we don't tell customers one size fits all, right? We don't tell customers, well, if you come to KBI, your process will always look exactly like this. And if it doesn't fit, well, tough luck, right? We'll start over, or we don't know how long it will take. What we tell is that, hey, our assumption is we will evaluate 4 resins, couple of media, we'll look at process this way, and we'll still try to stay within a reasonable time frame. And your cost will be approximately these, and these are your options. This is where you may end up by taking this choice, right? So we try to be hyper transparent about this information so that customer is aware what pricing they might get to at the end, but they also realize that the price and the value go hand in hand, right? And they understand how the value is getting embedded. The fact that by using KBI Selexis cell line, you can get, let's say, 18 gram per liter productivity, that has implications. That cell line has a cost, but in downstream, you are getting way more product than you were expecting, perhaps, right? And that gives you other options to do another arm of a clinical trial, etc. So all those values need to be laid out and explained very well so customer can make the choice.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Thank you. It could be challenging given that you're not making widgets.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about some mainstream misunderstandings, rumors. Chinese hamster ovary, the CHO cells, are one of the most important and widely used cell lines in biopharmaceutical development and manufacturing. They are important, obviously, for a variety of reasons. They are industry standard for biologics manufacturing, human-like protein processing, high stability and robust growth, safe and low risk, flexible for genetic engineering. Still, in the mainstream, to this day, there are people who fear vaccines, thinking that these hamster cells would impact their DNA. Can you bring some clarity to this?
Yes, absolutely. My pleasure. So what we are doing with Chinese hamster ovary cells, and they have been around since the 50s, right? Mid-50s. And then recombinant DNA technology has come in 70s, right? So the Chinese hamsters are basically being used as a vehicle to put the human DNA to make our protein. And then that protein is the product. This protein product is going into our body as a protein. When it goes in, it will never convert back to DNA, right? There is no mechanism for it's not going into cells, first of all, right? And if you are talking about, let's say, the mRNA vaccines that have been in conversations as well, mRNA vaccines are, yes, they're mRNA for small portion of virus protein, right? But that mRNA goes into cytoplasm of the cells and cannot go into your nucleus where your DNA resides. There is no possibility and no mechanism for it to become DNA from mRNA and integrate in our genome. So rest assured that your DNA is not being impacted. In fact, the change that you are getting is the opportunity to have a life-saving drug, right?
Thank you.
Yes.
In an industry that represents a crossroad of scientists, executives, and investors, there must be a lot of conflict. From your point of view, how should that conflict be managed?
So conflict is inevitable and it is not a failure. Conflict is, in fact, the giving potentially the momentum to do something great, solve a great problem, and be able to work together towards gaining momentum, right, to find the ultimate solution. If you just have science and you have no path to provide the supply chain and to get to a profitable margin, you cannot exist, right? On the other hand, if what you are generating is on paper profitable, but no one wants it, it doesn't work. So the scientific leaders, the executives, the board members, investors, everyone being on the same page and having conversation around what do we have that's unique, why would customers pay for this product, and where is the is the market demand signals, right? Those are all needing to come together. Yes, there will be conflict and difference of opinion, but that is how you gain success and you maintain success longer.
Thank you. What lessons would you like to share with young professionals watching you today?
For young professionals, the first thing I'll say is the tenacity and perseverance in this industry is very much needed. When I think back to my lab days, losing hope is easy. So where you may feel like your career is not moving in the right way. So hang in there and never give up. I especially say that for women scientists, where work-life balance can bring extra challenge in different phases of their life. If you have to pause or slow down, that's perfectly fine. You can always come back, right? And the industry creates opportunity for that. The other aspect I'll mention here for young professionals is always being able to think about how you can create the bigger impact and influence beyond your scientific capabilities, right? Being able to meld and tell a story that's not just your scientific capability, but you bring in the business side to it and you learn about the business side and be able to speak to it is going to be the path for you to get to the next level.
Thank you. Yeah. Can you please share executive insights about questions that boards should ask about the R&D advantage?
Yes, the boards definitely need to ask what will be the, in 3 years, 5 years, as we invest in R&D, right? Because that time horizon for R&D is always a couple of years out. That investment, what is the return on that investment, right? What will we get in terms of immediately monetarily, but also positioning-wise for the company? What will be special and unique? What will the market look like 5 years from now? Who are going to be the competitors? and how will this investment set us up for success. And boards don't always perhaps understand the scientific details, but that is the question, that is the bridge the scientist has to cross and be able to explain, right?
Awesome. Thank you. We have a segment in this podcast that says forecast or myth. So if you can briefly tell us whether you think this is just a myth or whether there is some level of truth to it. So the first one is AI will replace the role of R&D in the CDMO industry.
That's a myth. AI is going to be a support system. It's not going to replace R&D, right? Of course, AI has supported in tremendous ways already. We know about the story of, in fact, there was a Nobel Prize, right, for the protein folding work that was done with AlphaFold. At the same time, there is significant human interaction and significant amount of data generation that is needed, right? So AI will be a great tool, especially we are now talking about not just generative AI, but we are talking about agentic AI. So generative AI married to different tools, and agentic AI has great potential, but it's never going to be in terms of the thought leaders and the scientific rigor that comes in. What may get replaced is some of the routine tasks, right? That can be done easier, faster through computation, but AI is not going to replace R&D.
Thank you. Competing more on price and less on science is the way to go for CDMOs.
More on price
and less on science.
Oh, that's a myth. That's never going to work. That customers at the end of the day, yes, they care about price, but they need the solution, a long-lasting solution. And their biggest cost is the clinical trial cost, if you think about it. So the cost they're paying for generating the product, right, which is what they're outsourcing to CDMO, is a fractional cost compared to the 10-year-long clinical trial cost, right? So if you don't have the right product with the long shelf life, it does not help. So,
okay. Awesome. Thank you. And to close this interaction today, is there anything you would like to add that was not part of the questions and the conversation that we had today? Anything else you would like to tell the audience from you?
What I'd like to mention is that these are truly exciting times for this industry. There is a wide range of new molecules that are coming into clinics, and we are seeing the speed of innovation is accelerating, right? And that with AI is bringing huge potential. So unless we are planning around it and we are very aware of this change, we will be left behind. So I very much suggest to everyone to be aware of what's happening in the therapeutic protein fields and the level of diversity of molecule that's coming in. And know that now chemists and biologists, not just biologists, have to work together to solve this problem. So great time for scientists, great time for computational biologists, and I wish everyone success as we all compete in this area.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Dr. Mustafa, and for participating in the strategic planning room. And maybe one last sentence: is strategic planning crucial to growth and leadership?
100%. 100%. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.